Welcome all, and thank you for taking time to join us for today's webinar, Solving HR Service Delivery in Sherlock and ServiceNow. Great to see many of our customers, partners, and new names in the chat. At this time, we will close the chat and ask that you interact with us in the Q&A. Please know the presentation and audio recording will be shared after the session. Without further ado, let's move to our panel for introductions.
Hi, this is Kristen Early, and I am the Senior Director of HR Operations and HR Shared Services at Visteon Corporation. We are based out of Michigan, but we are a global company. I sit in my home just south of Grand Rapids, and I've worked from home for probably 6.5 years now. So I'm just one of those all the time remote workers, and I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Francel, Director of Product Marketing for Employee Workflows at ServiceNow. I'm usually located out of my home office outside of Chicago, Illinois, but today I'm actually in our headquarters in Santa Clara, California. My first business trip in 19 months, which has been kind of weird, but exciting to get back out on the road. I'm really happy to be facilitating this discussion with Kristen and team today.
Awesome. Debbie, that must be weird to feel weird flying. Flying is weird when that used to be commonplace. So.
I know, I used to be really good at packing and getting out on the road, and it took me a very long time. I couldn't find my Uber. It was very strange.
That's awesome. Well, hello, everyone. This is Wayne Chataway. I'm founder and CEO of The Anti. So thank you so much for joining. I see we have a lot of customers on here, a lot of people that are kicking the tires, super hoping that you get a lot out of this. And please ask questions often, because as Kristen and Debbie and will tell you, been there, done that. Many of them have either gone on your journey or are doing the journey that you're about to start. So please make this as interactive as possible, as interactive as a Zoom can be. So.
Thanks, Wayne. Will Finnegan, Managing Partner, responsible for delivery in the Eastern region for The Anti. Located in not sunny New Jersey, it's actually cold and rainy today. So I feel the Chicago weather and the Grand Rapids weather. So thanks everybody for joining. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, why don't we dive on in? So just very quickly, I think you probably know a little bit about ServiceNow, who we are and what we do. So I won't make this too much of a commercial for us, but for those of you who are new to ServiceNow, we are a strategic platform. We enable digital workflows across a variety of areas: IT, employee workflows, customer workflows. And when we don't have what you need out of the box, you can actually create your own workflows very easily. And we're really there to ensure that when your employees have a question, they can get an answer very quickly and get back to work. And also we provide workflows from the back end so that we enable your teams to be more efficient and effective at supporting your employees, really in one place, one data model, one architecture, to ensure that we provide that service to you efficiently and effectively. So with that, I'm going to pull Kristen into the conversation. Kristen, again, thank you so much for joining us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your role at Visteon Corporation, and for those who don't know much about Visteon, if you can maybe tell us a little bit about Viscion and what you do and how you provide services and products to the marketplace. So Kristen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. So Visteon is, as I mentioned, a global corporation. We are roughly 10,000 employees in 18 countries. We are the global leader in automotive cockpit electronics. So we are the only tier 1 supplier devoted exclusively to cockpit electronics. And our technology ensures that drivers and passengers in the car can interact easily and efficiently and more safely with the features in the cockpit and the ecosystem around the vehicle. Our product portfolio includes battery management systems, wireless battery management systems, digital cockpit electronics, and level 2+ ADAS. So ADAS actually stands for Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. So if you think of lane monitoring, when you start to veer out of your lane and your car warns you or even sometimes pulls you back into your lane. That's what we're talking about when we talk about ADAS. I've been with Visteon for coming up on 3 years now. And I am the Senior Director of HR Operations and HR Shared Services. So I was hired to stand up Visteon's first ever HR Shared Services Center. And we've been building that team in 3 regional locations since I began here. And we'll talk a little bit more about, why ServiceNow and why we needed that tool. But in the time that I've been here, we have indeed implemented ServiceNow, the service delivery, and I love it. I absolutely love it. This is my second implementation. At my prior company, we implemented ServiceNow as well. And so I love talking about it, and I will share everything and anything I know about ServiceNow and the Anti with you all today.
Great, thanks, Kristen. So why don't we dive on in exactly there? So why was HR service delivery important for Viscion to consider at this time? What was going on in your organization that made you all think this is where the journey that we need to embark on right now?
So when I began, our HR department was very decentralized. I'll put it that way. Each country, each location had its own HR and payroll, and they kind of operated as their own entities. And our new CHRO, who came in shortly before I did, her goal was to bring everybody into one global team. And so we had a lot of different manual, very different processes depending on the location. As I told you, I was setting up a shared services team and trying to enable operational efficiency across the globe. So I have in my past implemented HR shared services with no underlying tool like ServiceNow. And it's not impossible, but again, extremely hard to do. If you think about what you use ServiceNow for, there's no way to receive the tasks and the work, to track the work, to assign it to people, to adhere to any SLAs. So you cannot successfully operate HR shared services out of email long-term. And so you need a good foundation for your HR service delivery organization. I knew this when I took the job. I remember in my interview specifically saying, we cannot run shared services out of email. So bringing on a tool was always in the game plan, and it took us, we took a good amount of time to build a business case as we were building the shared services team and working out of email, and that's where we wound up. So again, I heard about ServiceNow because I implemented this tool before. So go ahead.
No. I was going to say, so you heard about ServiceNow, and as you started on that journey with ServiceNow, how did you decide what capabilities from ServiceNow to deploy, and what did you decide would be part of your initial implementation roadmap?
So I knew initially we for sure wanted the case management for the shared services team. So we wanted that side of the house. We also wanted a robust knowledge base, and we wanted an employee portal and platform for where we could drive our employees so that they could go and find answers to commonly asked questions. So those are what we implemented. We actually implemented 2 knowledge bases, one for the general employee population, and then one specifically for the HR and HR shared services team. And we implemented the platform for our employees, which we called Sherlock, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We wound up deploying 21 services in phase 1, and we decided to take a phased approach on the employee population. So about 6,000 of our employees are salaried employees in our tech centers, and the remainder are hourly manufacturing employees in our manufacturing plants across the globe. So we had some issues with our own internal IT security, not wanting us to use the mobile technology available in ServiceNow. So we decided, okay, we'll take some more time to bring in the hourly manufacturing workforce, because they don't have PCs in front of them all day, and we need a way for them to access the system. So that will be our phase 2, along with continuing to expand the services that we offer. I noticed on this page, and what I'd like to share about this is that our numbers have actually changed significantly. I'm trying to find, I wrote down my most current numbers today. We actually have over 830 knowledge articles, and I currently have over 500 sitting in the queue waiting to be created. So
Wow.
HR is really caught on. They're seeing the value now of these knowledge articles, and so the submission rate has increased a lot. We've actually had well over 4,000 knowledge article views and over 2,300 cases submitted now. So these numbers, when we put this together, those were the numbers, but they just go up exponentially every day.
That's funny, Kristen, because we just talked we've just been talking over the last couple of weeks to create this, and you just went live, as it says here, at the end of June. So good learning for everyone here. Your plan and your deployment of ServiceNow just continues to evolve and iterate once you go live. So really excited to hear what you're learning and that you continue on that journey and continue to deploy. So with that, let's pull Will into the conversation. Will, can you talk a little bit about working with Kristen and the Viscion team and their implementation journey and how the Anti got involved?
Happy to. So, when we started out, and I say way back in January, like January was so long ago. When we started out with Kristen, I think one of the goals that, we had when we started to get to know the team was to really demonstrate that we're a partner to Visteon. We wanted to make sure that we knew who we were talking to. We wanted to make sure that we had the right resources available for, I think, the key decisions and the key discussions, and have very targeted conversations in that capacity. It honestly felt like we just fed in, like right into Kristen's team. It was so pleasant working with the Visteon team. And I think it was also important for us to not only focus on, Kristen and her team, but then also look at the broader group at Visteon. So Visteon had parts of the IT modules deployed already. So when we came in, we had to take into account, as Kristen is looking at this initial release and as she's looking down the path for future releases, how are we going to make sure that the pieces that we're configuring, building for release 1, how are they going to make sure that they stay out of box, how they're going to be able to uptake new functionality with the releases that ServiceNow puts out twice a year. How do we make sure that everything is ultimately going to meet the standards that Visteon already had in place? And Visteon's IT group, and Kristen had mentioned some of their constraints. We made sure that they were involved for all of those design decisions. I would say, one of the things that I think was really important on this journey was that Kristen and team had done a lot of homework and a lot of research. So those first services that we took a look at with them, they had already thought through a lot of what is the day-to-day life of our agents like? How are we going to take that into account so that we design holistically, because we were doing a global implementation? How do we make sure that we meet not only IT standards, but GDPR standards and the ever-changing interpretations that we saw throughout the project? And how do we set up, not only this initial phase for success, but that longer journey? How do we make sure that, Visteon's lifetime with ServiceNow is going to be successful? So I think that was, our initial steps on the journey. And I think that as we looked at it with that lens of right people, right time, right place, and also future focused, I think that really paved the way for us to make this a success.
That's really helpful, Will. So you talked a bit about the homework that Kristen and team did. What we have here and what you noted was the changing requirements. We've all seen in the last year and a half that we can't always predict what's going to happen in the world around us, whether it's something in a natural disaster, something like a pandemic, or just regulations changing. So can you can you, Kristen, talk a little bit about how your preparedness and how your partnership really helped you to be agile when things like GDPR requirements changed, or just you encountered things that you weren't necessarily planning for? But can you just talk a little bit about that agility that you both were able to achieve? Maybe
Sure.
Kristen will
Yeah,
start with
you're
you.
absolutely right. So Will's right. We did do a lot of homework before. And I was very lucky because on the team at Visteon implementing this were people who have implemented and worked in ServiceNow before. So I had that extra edge because we knew what we were creating. We knew what the system could do. And we actually went out to our entire HR team across the globe and asked them to tell us and document every task that you do. And it was a long project because we said, if you do it for 5 minutes, we still want to know you do it. So we said, tell us how often you do it. Every day, every week, quarterly, yearly, once a month. So we went out and we had them come back to us with, these are the tasks where we spend our time. And we use that information to look for like the low hanging fruit and say, okay, where can we get the most bang for our buck? And those were the 24 services we initially said we were going to come in with. Now, speaking of agility, you notice we only deployed 21. The reason for that is the complexity on some of our services changed. And so we came in thinking we were going to have some medium complexity and mostly low complexity. And what it really turned out was we had a number of high complexity services. And those take more time for your developers. And so we kind of swapped out. I said, it was like, all right, I'll give you 2 low complexity for 1 high. So we wound up in the end with 21 services. But that was, again, on the fly, we decided we really want this one that has higher complexity. So we're willing to give up something else that we might be able to create ourselves down the line. And the other thing that Will talked about was the GDPR. So if you have offices in Europe, I think you're probably aware of the Schrems 2 decision that came out. And those regulations took effect right in the middle of our implementation. And so what happened was we had to go back and relook at the encryption methodology that we had chosen when we signed our contract with ServiceNow. We had to change that. We moved our data center. And again, we had the IT portal already. So our existing data center was in Canada. And we had to move that over to Europe. And then we wound up having to add language to our contract and re-sign the contract using one of our European entities. So that was a lot of wrenches thrown into an already tight, I think, implementation timeline. But I have to tell you, ServiceNow, I thought they were just going to say, we're done. I'm the anti, I thought, but they worked with us every step of the way. And we got it done and we went live on the day we said we were going to go live. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Will.
No, I mean, it was, I think for us, and I think when we went into it, the team knew that there were going to be things that changed as a result of GDPR. I think the thing that was important as we were approaching those requirements was that we needed to build it in a sustainable way. So knowing that it had already changed once during our implementation, we wanted to put something in place that was easy to maintain, easy to make changes to. I think the neat thing was we were able to do it with completely out of the box functionality. And I think that was probably one of the bigger challenges for us, was how do we make this work with that delivered functionality so that it doesn't matter if you're on Paris, Quebec, Rome, San Diego, and Debbie, please don't get mad. I say T is Tunisia because Tunisia is fun to say.
It's going to be Tokyo.
Tokyo, also fun. U is going to be really great. I'm going to guess it's somewhere in Brazil. But, you know, it's that designing with the future in mind. We wanted it so that it wouldn't be affected by those future releases. And we wanted to make it so that it was sustainable. You know, beyond that, I think really what we were hoping to, I think, accomplish was, and, you know, Kristen, I'm going to harp on service complexity. Definitely a lesson learned for us to make sure that, you know, we're very clear on the difference between low, medium, and high. But I think that that's also important, is that we're, you know, nimble, agile, flexible. And I think, you know, if you go into an engagement and are just rigid, it doesn't build that partnership. There has to be that give and take. And I think we learned pretty quickly that, you know, it made it so that conversationally, because we had such, you know, involved parties, and that it felt like we were all one team with one goal of making sure that the platform was stood up and was going to be, you know, accepted by that broader employee population, made it easy for us to say, you know what, we're going to take this and this out and put it in the backlog to make sure that we have room for things that are a higher priority, that are more important.
So there's a question that's come in, so a couple, which is actually where we were going to take the conversation. One came in around the governance model, and that's what you're both kind of speaking to. How did you prioritize the high, medium, low? And then Will, where you just kind of ended was, how did you decide what you were going to take out, put back in, and stay on time and on budget? So Kristen, can you talk about the Viscion governance model, the size of your team? You talked about reallocating resources. There was another question that came in about just the size of your team. So your first question here is, or your first lesson here is the right size of your project team. So can you talk about the size of your team and then the governance model that you put into place so that you could prioritize the high, medium, low, and stay on time and on budget?
So my team was way too small. And again, that's why this is on the lesson learned and takeaways. I don't think we realized until the very end, when it was right before cutover, and it was, everything was, there's just so much going on, that I realized, wow, my team's way too small. I think I had roughly, I'd set about 7 people that were like dedicated. They weren't dedicated 100% to the project. They were the core team of the project of about 7. Now we would pull other people in when we needed them for consulting or for input or for, you know, how does this work for you as a manager kind of thing. But the core team was really 7 people. It was way too small. It was way too small because we all still had our day jobs as well.
Sure.
So I would say that was a lesson learned. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. As far as the governance model, you know, we had gone through iterations again before we started the implementation, just on our side, with what services do we want, which ones are most important to us, which ones are, these would be a nice to have if we have time. And because, again, several members on my team had already done this, it enabled us to look at that ahead of time. Like Will said, we had a lot of stuff ready. Like on day 1, they're like, all right, so at some point you're going to need to figure out what services. I was like, oh, here they are. Like we had them ready because we'd done it before. So it was doing that pre-work. And that's really when we determined, I think, you know, which were the priorities. As far as knowledge governance, so you have the ability to set up approval paths and expiration dates on all of your articles. So we made a decision that no article would go over 1 year without it expiring and having to be either republished or resubmitted. And whoever the author is has to come in and check that and make sure it's still accurate. And every article comes through. We've got 3 knowledge owners on my team, and every article comes through and needs to be read, not only for accuracy, it needs to be reviewed for accuracy, to make sure it makes sense, to make sure all the links and the attachments are working, and to make sure that it fits the format, because we chose a font and we chose a font size, and we want everything to look the same for our employees when they go in. So all of our articles are funneled through an approval path.
And Kristen, you mentioned at the beginning that our stats were off, right? Because you had, over 700 and now you're moving to over 800. How are you making decisions from a governance perspective about what you're adding as you're learning? Are you basing that off of data? Is it off of suggestions from, regional counterparts? What's that governance model looking like?
So both. So we've had some employees come forward and say, hey, I searched on Sherlock for this and I couldn't find it. Well, what I love about that is that they're searching, and we've set up an email box for them to send us a message if that happens. And a lot of the articles they're suggesting are not necessarily HR related articles, but the fact is they're on a portal, they're expecting to find it out there. So we go find that article and we put it out there for them. And so our suggestions are coming from both our employee population and then from our country HR teams. So Mexico got together and we've got multiple locations in Mexico, and they got together, they appointed a point person in their region, and she went out to each location. She gathered all the articles and she put them all in our format for us, and then submitted them in a big block. So as Works Council agreements get updated in Germany and France, they send us those and we publish them for them. The HR team does. As questions get asked of the HR team now their response is, now I'll answer the question, but now I'm going to submit an article so that we can get it out there so the next employee can find the answer. So I'd say the vast majority are coming from the country HR teams right now.
That's great. A few questions coming in here, Kristen, around how you decided what your 21 HR services are, and can you give some examples of those HR services? How many were out of the box from ServiceNow, and then how many were configured specifically for Visteon?
Sure. So most of them were configured for us because we put our own little spin on, even if it was just a general benefits inquiry, which is out of the box, we put our own little spin on what we wanted in a drop down. So we really, again, we took those lists of tasks that we got from the HR team ahead of time and said, okay, they're spending a lot of time submitting employee job changes to our human resources system. So what we did, which was kind of unique, was we enabled a sort of manager self-service and employee self-service in ServiceNow. So our human capital management system, our HR system of record, it does have the ability to do that, but that hasn't been turned on for most of our countries at all. So we said, well, you know what, let's get the managers used to submitting their own changes, and that will save a lot of time and emails going to HR. So if you're a manager and you want to promote one of your employees, or you want to change their job, or you want to give them a new supervisor, if you're an employee and you want to change some of your personal information or your taxes, we set up services that enabled them to submit those directly in ServiceNow and in Sherlock. And those have the more complex approval paths and workflows, and that's what made these higher complexity services. But we thought, well, let's get managers used to requesting their own things. You shouldn't have to email HR. You should just be able to do it. And for any of you out there who have Workday, managers do that in Workday. Well, we don't have that ability in our HR system today. So we thought, let's set it up in ServiceNow. And then when we do activate it sometime down the line in our HR system, they'll be used to it. So we did, those were the biggest bang, right? The job changes, the employee requests, the general inquiries about benefits and compensation and paychecks, and I just lost the other one I was trying to think of. Anyway, but so we chose them really based on what our HR spends their time doing today, what would give us the biggest time save for our HR teams and our managers and our employees in the future. And so that's really what we based it off of when we chose those top 21.
Great. So a lot of great questions are coming in. So I think I'm going to move us to some of this Q&A just because there's some great questions coming in. So Kristen, how many service delivery staff do you have supporting your employees, and how many in the HR team today?
So in the HR shared services team supporting the employees, I think we're at 15 or 16 today in 3 different regions. So we decided to build our teams in 3 different locations. I have 1 team in Mexico, 1 team in Bulgaria, and 1 team in India. And that just helps us with time zones and language capabilities as we build those out as well. HR overall, I think we're at about 150 maybe total HR. That's everyone. That's COE, that's generalists, that's everybody that's in HR total.
Great. And you are on UltiPro today, correct, for your HCM?
Correct. Yep.
Perfect. And are you leveraging ServiceNow? I don't believe so right now for labor or employee relations issues.
We are not right now. We had thought about that actually. That was initially one of our initial case types that we wanted to submit. And in speaking, it wasn't a priority. And when we had to move and shift some around, we just said, all right, well, we're just going to let that one go for right now. We'll consider that for a future phase.
So I saw that question out here. Shauna, I believe it was you who asked if you are interested in talking more about that. We have many organizations who do leverage ServiceNow from that perspective. So happy to talk more about that. Feel free to reach out to your ServiceNow team because that is a very common use case and has become much more common. And we do have a purpose-built solution for that. So happy to talk more about that. Monica's asked the size of your knowledge team. I think you said you have 3 specific knowledge managers, and then it sounds like you have resources out in your different regions who submit suggestions for knowledge articles.
Yes, everyone in HR has been given the knowledge creator role. So they can all create knowledge. There are 3 of us who are what we call knowledge owners, and all approvals run through the 3 of us. Great.
And then last live question before we turn it over back to you for just the value that you've received from the platform so far, and then your plans for your next rollouts. Just talk a little bit, and Will, I'd love to pull you in here. Just key lessons learned from this deployment in Europe. GDPR obviously changes. We talked a little bit about that. What complexities did you see there? What was different about your global rollout? Maybe not just in Europe, but you mentioned, you have locations in Mexico and elsewhere. What was the difference there? And what lessons did you learn from that global rollout?
Well, and honestly, this is such a long conversation to have about the GDPR and the Schrems decision that came out during, but really, it comes down to the encryption of the data and where that data is sitting and where that data goes to and comes from. And that's, and who can access it and who can turn it over. So in speaking with our legal counsel, the biggest concern that drove this decision in Europe was an agency in the US, let's just say the Secret Service or the FBI or one of the acronyms, comes to a company and says, we want your data. It comes down to who owns that data and who can turn it over to them and whether it's encrypted or not. And that's really what this whole decision was about. And ServiceNow has a handful of different encryption options that you can choose. But none of them, unfortunately, met the stringent requirements that my company was requiring as far as who owns the data. If the Secret Service comes to ServiceNow and asks for that data, will ServiceNow give it to them? And if they do, is it encrypted? That's really what it came down to. And so I would be happy to have an at-length conversation with anyone who wants to talk about that. But that's really what it came down to for my company. And my company is very, very conservative and very risk averse when it comes to anything GDPR related. So.
Well, let's pull you in on that. How does the Anti typically approach global deployments, maybe from a process perspective? Is there anything that you did to help Viscion, and maybe just your perspective as you help other global organizations?
So I think one of the things that the team brought was that mindset of, even though most of the people that we were interacting with were US based or nearshore over in Europe, we had to look at it, absolutely agnostic. So the way that we do things in one region might not be the way that we do things in another region, might be different in a third region. So any time that we had, here's our process and here are the nuances to that process and here are the regional specifics, we would start to question it and say, but why? Why do we need an extra set of approvals? Why do we need an extra person touching it? So that we could try to simplify it and bring more of that harmonization, for the Visteon team. Every one of those nuances is just another thing to have to worry about as you're maintaining the platform, testing the platform on future releases. So we wanted to take that administrative burden away and also make the experience for both, I'm going to say the term employee, but the employee as the end user that's submitting the case, but also the employee that's responsible for helping solve that case. So the agent that's working it. We want it to be simple. Any real burden that's put on them detracts from that experience. So that's the way that we approach design with Kristen and team was let's look at it with that in mind. Design the right process, design it as simply as possible to allow for the team to get efficiency in that way. And knowing that ServiceNow has the wonderful capability to do ad hoc tasks on any of them. So if there was, those one-off cases, very easy to, allow for that. So look at it from the 80-20 rule. That was, I think, one of the other things that we brought to it was, we're not designing for perfection. We're designing to meet most of the use cases and not every single edge case that was out there.
That's super helpful, Will. Thanks. And it sounds like Viscion's benefited from that, and then they're learning as they go and already deploying some changes based on what they're seeing in those regions. So
and if Kristen, I could jump in, I would like to say that the Anti was absolutely fantastic the entire time. So like Will said, they were the voice of reason. And when we started to go off on tangents, they brought us back. They are immensely knowledgeable about ServiceNow and about HR service delivery. And we would go to them and say, what do you guys think? What have you seen? What have other customers done? And they always had a good answer and a fantastic answer. I've worked, as I said before, we implemented this in a former company. I've worked with a different partner, and it was absolutely night and day compared to our experience with the Anti. And as an example of what they had to deal with us because of the lagging approval, literally, I think it was, Will, maybe 2 days before we were going to cut over to the production environment, we said, okay, guys, we're going live with everybody but France and Germany, and we need to wait to get approval for them. And so the Anti was like, we went back in, had to change some code, and we were able to do that. And it was just that easy for us to have this last second change. And the Anti was just fantastic through the entire process.
That's so great to hear, Kristen. Really appreciate that. And I'm sure everybody here loves hearing about it, the great partnership that you have. So just a few more questions have come in. One is really that integration you mentioned with UltiPro and really how you helped to elevate the experience for your managers and for employees around things like job changes and so on. Can you talk a little bit about the integration between ServiceNow and UltiPro and really any other underlying HR technologies that you have?
Yeah, sure. So we have the main integration is going from UltiPro to ServiceNow. We are not feeding anything back. We had talked about that. We talked about that with ServiceNow. We talked about that with the Anti, and we just decided, you know what, we just don't want to mess with that right now. Again, I think we might consider that for a future phase, so that if someone submits a job change, as an example, it goes through the approval path, it's fully approved. It would be nice to have that fed back into our system and not have a human have to do that. But we thought, oh yeah, that's not a priority, that's phase 2. So we spent a lot of time coming up with the list of fields that we were going to feed from UltiPro over to ServiceNow. We needed enough that we could do everything we wanted to do on the ServiceNow side. We wanted enough so that we knew who your manager was, what country you were in, what location you were in, what your job code and job level were, because a lot of our workflows and approvals are built on those things. We wanted to bring enough over so that when, as a manager goes in to do a job change, the only people they can see in their dropdown are their direct reports. So we needed to bring enough over, but not too much that we got into trouble with data privacy, because we didn't need all the information. So it was a big working group of, you know, my team and the Anti and our legal team, and we decide, and our IT security team, and we said, okay, here's our list. We got it approved by everybody, and then we went forward with that list.
Are there any other systems you're integrating with, or is it mostly UltiPro?
Just UltiPro right now.
Okay.
For the HR side, I think our IT platform might use a different, they might get fed from a different system, but yeah, for the HR side, it's just UltiPro.
Okay. And can you talk just a little bit, you have here virtual agent and HR chat. Can you talk about the success that is being driven from virtual agent and chat?
So I'm not getting the usage out of the chat that I had hoped we would yet. So I think that's going to be something that is in our future plans, because we, as part of our ongoing communications and change management, we have frequent communications that we send out to our whole employee population. Some we just send out to managers. So we really are going to start, I think, needing to emphasize the chat more. It's being used, but not as much as the cases. So people just submit a case. We decided we did not want to do email to case, and we do not have a telephone call center. So the only way for you to submit a case is through the tool or through chat. We can create a case for you. So we're really hoping to drive more chat usage in our future communications. But at my last company, we used it a ton, and I love that feature. I love being able to chat with our agents, and that's part of the reason that we did put 3 regional HR shared service centers, was so that if an employee in Germany wanted to chat, there was someone within their time zone that was on that day and available to chat with them. There was an HR agent available for them.
Sure. So, Kristen, it sounds like you're using data a lot. You're looking at the dashboards and the information. And Shauna asked a great question here. How have you used analytics? What analytics are you using? And how's that really helping you to make some decisions about your next?
So we're using analytics around knowledge. We're looking for which articles are getting the most views, which are getting the lowest ratings. We actually have taken that, right? We said, well, why is this article getting low ratings? And we went and looked at it. And we was like, okay, we can see, yeah, there's some errors. This link might not be totally getting them where they need to be. So we went and fixed it. And then we actually put out on our dashboard, an announcement saying, hey, thanks for your feedback on knowledge. We're listening. We're making changes based on your feedback, in one of our scrolling announcement sections. So we're using that data. We're looking at cases. We're looking at what type of cases are coming in, and we're looking at who is successfully handling those cases. So again, this 70% you see here is really referring to how many cases came in that I think you can call it case deflection. You can call it first touch, response or first touch resolution, meaning 70% of the cases coming in are being handled by our tier 1 HR shared services team or the HR systems team. And those cases are then not being routed to the country HR or any other COE. That's way better than I expected. I had hoped for that in the long run, but to have achieved that in 3 months, that's just one of the things I'm super proud of.
And what would you say are your critical success factors? And do you think those are going to change over time? You probably have those kind of early days success factors, and then you think you'll be looking at in the future?
Yes, we're definitely going to try and look at knowledge searched but not available. So that's something we're working on, being able to pull that data so we can say, what are people searching for and not finding, so we can create more knowledge. Again, the whole intent is employees should come to this portal, have a Google-like search experience, find what they're looking for very quickly, and get back to work. That's really where we're going to get I think the biggest impact within our organization. So you'll hear me talk about knowledge a lot and what are people searching for and what articles are helpful and what articles aren't. That's because I think the meat of this is the portal and getting employees in and out and back to work and having things easy to find. After that, obviously, we're going to have cases, we're going to have transactions that need to happen. And so we will be monitoring how many of those are coming in. And again, are we getting a ton of benefits? Are we getting mostly comp? Are they mostly job changes? We've put our whole job requisition creation form out on, and so managers are filling that. That's actually one of our biggest services that's used to date. We're just hiring a ton of people across the globe right now. So watching that and watching our SLAs, because we've committed to our SLA and we've said we will have this case resolved without any kind of extenuating circumstances. We will have this closed and the employee or the manager's answer within X amount of time. And we are committed to maintaining those and meeting those SLAs.
Awesome. So we have just a few last questions. Let's see if we can speed round through them, Kristen, and get them all answered for this audience. The questions have been fantastic. So quick question again about chat and virtual agent. Why do you think that this hasn't been as utilized, or is HR chat with your live agents more utilized than virtual agent? Do you think that's just based on your persona type? Why do you think that hasn't been as utilized?
It is hugely based on, I think, the culture of my company right now. Virtual agent, we didn't find a lot of use case for the actual true virtual agent. So we really didn't even set any of those up. We thought, okay, we're going to set one general inquiry up, but in the end, the employee wasn't going to find their answer, and we knew they weren't, and they were going to have to submit a case. So we said, why are we bothering sending them through this whole virtual agent? What we really wanted them to be able to do was chat with a live HR agent. So that's where we put our focus. And we didn't go live with any of the virtual agent options that come out of the box. So yeah, and it's a cultural thing, and we're going to try and drive that over the next few months, like I said, for employees.
Great. Are you allowing attachment of documents to requests?
Yes.
Great. And did you enable feedback for knowledge articles?
Yes, we did. And that's actually, we're using that quite a bit. When we get negative feedback, primarily we're reaching out and saying, what was it that you didn't find helpful so we can fix it.
Great. And are you using employee document management?
No.
No, not as of release 1.
Great. And was this project part of a broader HR service delivery transformation?
Yes. Yep, it was.
Great. And can you elaborate a little bit more on the agent experience when inquiries are escalated to tier 2?
So we've created multiple groups, and I'll try not to be too technical, but let's say you are the person in Portugal who would answer benefit questions, right? That tier 1 might not know. If it's so specific and my tier 1 team in Bulgaria does not know the answer, they have to escalate it, but we know it's benefits related. We have set up groups, and we've assigned people in each location to those groups. And you can be in more than one group, but we really have tried hard to escalate to the person that we know can answer that question. So in some cases, it's an HR generalist. In some cases, it's a payroll person within that country. It could be a person on our compensation team that we know can answer that question. So we did a lot of work to design those groups. We know it's going to be a lot of maintenance, and we were okay with that. And the Anti said, the more you add, the more you have to maintain. And I said, I understand that, and we're willing to do that because we want to get the question to the right person.
Got it. And then the last live question here is about your cataloging approach. That's, I'm going to just say, Ashley, that's probably a long conversation for both Kristen and actually for the Anti. So what I might suggest there is actually connecting with Will and the Anti team to talk about how different the cataloging approach was and really what's involved in configuring that for an organization specifically. And then Kristen, just didn't ask of you, I know you're headed out on vacation, but just wanted to say there have been great questions here, and really we thank you so much for sharing your experience. And Will, thank you as well. I imagine some folks might want to reach out to you, Kristen, because we just, kind of touched the surface of some of these questions just to get through them here at the end. But I imagine you might get some LinkedIn requests and some reaches.
No, that I welcome that. I love to talk about ServiceNow. So yeah, it's such a great tool, and I love that I'm getting to use it again at this company that I'm at now.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen. This has been fantastic. And we went a little bit off, but I do have one last question for you. If you could say one thing of which you're most proud, what would that be?
So I love our portal name. I know that, that's the fun part of the project, is choosing what you're going to name your portal. We really made a conscious effort to stay away from, Ask HR, because our whole purpose was you should be able to find the answer yourself. You shouldn't even have to ask HR. So we don't want to call it Ask HR. So we put a lot of thought into the employee going in and investigating and digging and looking for the answer themselves. And that's why we came up with Sherlock. And we actually had a scavenger hunt upon go live, and it helped us actually drive initial usage to the portal. Was we sent out a set of 10 questions that you would have to go to Sherlock to search for to be able to answer. And we said, fill out your answers, send them back, and we'll put you all into a raffle for like 10 different prizes. And so I love the portal name. And I love that we, even with our small team and with all the GDPR wrenches that were thrown in at the last minute, that we are able to complete the project on time and on budget.
That's fantastic. And I love that not only the name, but really that change management exercise as well as a way to get people out there. So again, I just want to say before I turn it back over to Samra and the Anti team, thank you, Kristen, so much. And to the Anti, thank you both for being such great partners of ServiceNow. So thanks for this call. And thank you so much to everybody for attending and for all the great questions.
Thank you, Kristen, Debbie, and Will. Today's winner for the AirPods Pro is Taylor Norrell with Laport. Congratulations, Taylor. I'll reach out today with your to get your address, and then Wayne, back to you.
Woohoo! So AirPods. Well, I mean, I can't say enough. Thank you so much, Kristen, for your just all of your content today. I mean, I'm sure it was helpful for everyone. Usually when questions come at the rapid pace they were coming at you, then you had people engaged. So I know Debbie was smiling and I was smiling the whole time. So lots of love for ServiceNow and The Anti coming from Michigan. So we certainly appreciate that. So thank you so much. I know we'll be engaged for months and years to come. So thank you so much for that opportunity. I did want to, there's a number of clients out there. If you want to be Kristen when you grow up and host one of these webinars, we certainly would welcome it. So all I would ask is to reach out to your account executive, whether it be Joe, Matt, or Mike, or one of your client partners. We'd love to have you on for another webinar. I think these things are very helpful. So that's one thing. And number two, if you're not a client of ours, and you're intrigued by today, whether it's getting you started or getting you ready to do something, whether you've done phase one and you're sort of looking at phase two, which I know that was one of the questions today from the group, or if you just need some help, just some, call it in the platform as a service world, it's the new age managed service where we take on some or all of your administration with ServiceNow. We can help you with that as well. So whether you're a client or not a client yet, we'd love to help you. We're in love with ServiceNow as much as Kristen. And so please reach out to us if you would like to have further discussions. With that, I think it's a wrap. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Will, Debbie, and Kristen for piping in. Samara, thanks for hosting this. Awesome job, and enjoy those AirPods.